In this video, I'm going to show you how to adapt the interfaces for the Address Clean web service within CDS. So Address Clean is running at the moment. You can see that here in the current task window of the server console. And let's just have a look at how it works. So I'm going to go to the web service tester. And in the web service tester on the left, I've added an address to be cleaned. It's 92 Stafford Road, that's address 1. The city is, I've put in Sleaford, S-L-E-A-F-O-R-D. That's actually a typo there. It shouldn't have an L in, but I've put that in deliberately. And the postal code, it's a British address, by the way, BN251UA, and the country UK. So let me hit send, and let's see what the Address Clean service does with that, and we'll see the outputs on the right in just a moment. So there we go, it's being output. And if I move down, you can see the city has been cleaned. So we've taken out the L that shouldn't have been there, Seaford. So it's recognised that. It's added the admin area, that's the county, East Sussex, which wasn't in the inputs. And you can see the AV full address here, 92 Stafford Road, Seaford, cleaned, East Sussex added, and then the postal code BN251UA, and it's verified there, look, as well. So you can see it's added some information, it's cleaned the address. Now, in this example, I want to add 3 pieces of information to the output that are not currently there. And this will entail changing the interfaces. So we're going to tailor or customize the interfaces for Address Clean. Those 3 pieces of information I want to add are, firstly, the original address that was entered over here on the left. So what we're getting out at the moment is the cleaned address, that's great. But let's say that out of our service, we also want the original address, which remember was slightly different. Sleaford with an L rather than Seaford without the L. And it didn't have the admin area East Sussex. So that's one piece of information. I want the original address as well as the cleaned address. And also in my output, I want to see separately the premise number and in a separate field, the thoroughfare. Now we've got both those pieces of information here. They're actually in address 1. Premise number 92, thoroughfare, Stafford Road, but I want them in separate fields as well. So I'm going to have to adapt the interface to show those 2 pieces of information in separate fields. And in a moment, I'll show you how we go about doing just that. Okay, so how do we go about adapting, tailoring the interfaces for the Address Clean service? Well, let's first of all stop it running in the server console. Let's cancel it. And we'll shut down the web service, and now we can make changes. So we'll go into the director interface, and let's start by looking at the job. That's often a good place to start to understand what's going on. So I'm in the CDS, the EDQ CDS project in the project browser, and there is the real-time address clean job. I've got that selected there. Double click it to open it. Okay, so what we notice here is that the job has just one phase. But within that phase, we have 2 processes. So this is the symbol for a process, these 3 sort of yellow balls connected up. Clean address, and then the other process is clean address post process. And they're connected together, look. And both of these processes use for their input and for their output a data interface. So this is the symbol for a data interface. So there's the input, there's the output from the first process. There's the input, there's the output from the second process. And we can see the name of the data interface here as well. It's called Address Clean. And it's the same data interface, look, that's used for the input and the output for both processes. So that data interface is going to be key. That's going to be one of the things we need to change. So we're going to need to change that data interface, if necessary, to add the 3 new attributes that we want. And then also we're going to have to change one of these processes to make sure those attributes get populated. And lastly, we'll have to change a web service. Now, if you don't remember how data interfaces work and what they're for, do go back and have a look at the fundamentals course, which includes some information about that. So I'm going to assume you know basically how data interfaces work and what they're used for. Anyway, the data interface we're interested in is called Address Clean. Let's go and have a look at it in the project browser. Still within the EDQ CDS project, we'll open up the data interfaces node And there's the address clean data interface, and we'll double click it to look at it. And here are the output, here are the attributes associated with this data interface. And if we just scan down those, you can see that they're basically similar, not quite the same, but similar to the ones that we saw in the web service tester. So, for example, we have the address 1 here. Remember that had both the premise and the thoroughfare in it. And obviously we want those things separately. Going further down, if we just look down, there's the verification code, for example. And there is the full address. Okay. And that contains the cleaned address. Now we're going to have to add to this data interface. And we're going to have to add 3 attributes which aren't here. For the premise number on its own, for the thoroughfare on its own, and for the original address. So let's do that now. To do it, we're just going to click the plus button here. So let's add them in. And in fact, we'll add them just here. Let's call this one original address before cleaning. Okay. And then we'll add another one, which we'll call premise number. And finally one which we'll call thoroughfare. Okay. And we'll put those just to keep them sort of separate from everything else. We'll put them at the bottom of our data interface, the last 3 attributes. So we've added those 3 attributes. Okay, fine so far. Now, what we're going to have to do now is have a look at the mapping. So a data interface is really a template of attributes, and it needs to be mapped either to a real-time web service or to some stage data or whatever. So it needs to be mapped to, if you like, an actual source or target of data. And let's have a quick look at the mapping here on the output of the final process in the address clean job. So if we just give that a double click, and as it opens, you can see there is the address clean data interface associated with a writer. And it's the mapping here which is showing us what that data interface is going to push the data to. And there's the mapping. And it's a mapping called real-time address clean output. Real-time address clean output. Okay, so let's look at that mapping. If we go back over to the data interfaces on the left, and we right-click, and we go to mappings here, then the mappings will open. And there is the mapping that we've just seen. I'll just make this a bit bigger. Real-time address clean output. Now, as you'd expect, the type is real-time, as opposed to stage data, for example. That means that this mapping takes the data from our data interface template, if you like, and it pushes it out to a web service. And the name of the web service, we can actually see here as well, is address clean. So if I double click on this mapping, you can see the address clean web service on the right. Now at the bottom here are my 3 new attributes that I added. And obviously I want to output those to the web service so that they'll actually come out. We'll see them in the web service tester, but any application that you're integrating CDS with will also have them. But the problem is that my web service does not include these 3 attributes. I haven't added them to the web service yet. So before I can map them, I need to add 3 attributes to the address clean web service for the original address, the premise number, and the thoroughfare. So let's just cancel out of the mapping for a moment. Let's cancel out of that dialog box. Let's go down, still within the EDQ CDS project, in the project browser, and let's just find the web services. There they are. And there's the address clean web service, and let's open that. And we're going to do the same thing that we did in the data interface. We're going to add 3 new attributes, which we'll call similar things. Original address, I think before cleaning was what we called it. And secondly, premise number. And thirdly, thoroughfare. There we go. And let's Now I've made a mistake there because I've added those for input, and I should have added them for output, so let's just get rid of them. We'll go to the outputs, that's really what I wanted to do, and let's just add them here. Sorry about that. So original address before cleaning, premise number, these can all be strings, that's fine, and thoroughfare. Okay, good. So there's our 3 attributes added to the web service. So I've added them to the data interface, and I've added them to the web service that it talks to. And now I need to map. I need to map those attributes from the data interface to the web service. So we go back to the data interface mappings. There's our address clean data interface. Right click, choose mappings. There's the mapping for output, the address clean real-time address clean output mapping that maps to our web service. Let's double click it to open it. Now if we go to the bottom, we can see hopefully those 3 new fields in the web service at the bottom of the data interface, which remember is just a template. Again, there are the 3 new fields. Let's map them. Okay, so original address to original address, premise number to premise number, thoroughfare to thoroughfare. Hit finish. Okay, so quite a lot of the job is now done, in that we've adapted our data interface, we've adapted our web service. So we now have attributes for those 3 fields that we wanted to output, 3 extra fields, both in our data interface and in our web service, and they're mapped. That's great. But there's one more thing we need to do, which is that we need to make sure that our processes are populating those 3 fields. No point having the fields unless we actually populate them, right? And we do that in the processes. So from the job here, we can right click and open, let's open the clean address process first. So here we go. And at the right hand side of this process, hopefully there'll be a writer. There we go. And that's writing to the address clean interface. That's the data interface that we've just been playing with. And let's open it. There we are. And so we've got here the original address field, the premise number field, and the thoroughfare field, and we need to populate those. But in order to do that, we're going to have to do some work, because here are the selected attributes for writing. Here are the attributes we have over on the right. And if we just take a look at this, if I move down, all of the attributes added by the AV processor are prefixed with AV dot, okay, AV dot country name, for example. And if we look down there, we should see AV premise number. So that's fine. We can add that one, and we can hook it up to the premise number field in our data interface. Good, that one's done. And if I go down a little bit further, we'll see AV thoroughfare. There we go. And we can hook that one up as well, and that's done too. So whoops, there we go. So that's 2 of our 3 extra attributes taken care of. But if we look through these attributes added by the AV processor, it does not add the original address. It doesn't give us that by default. And you know, we have the original address because it's in the data that we input, which we see on the left here, but it's in bits. Right, we've got the potentially anyway the address 1, address 2, address 3, the city, etc., etc., and we've got those split up into different fields. So it's a bit messy. Probably we want to output it in a single field. So we're going to have to do a bit of work. We'll click OK on the writer configuration, and what we'll do in the process, we'll just do a sort of quick and messy fix, and you could do something a bit more elaborate than this, and a bit cleaner if you want to, but I'll stick to quick and messy for now. So what I'm going to do is just in my process here, I'm going to add from the transformation family a concatenate processor, so you can tell this is going to be quick and dirty. I'm going to hook it up to the writer. Let's just put it over there. As far as to the reader from the address clean interface. And this is a really quick and dirty fix. I'm actually going to take most of the input fields, all of the ones that will contain anything to do with the address, So address 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. All of the locality fields, the city, the admin area, admin area, the country. We won't bother with the allowed verification results and so on. We'll take all of those and we will concatenate them into a field which we'll call original address. There we go. And in the options, the separator string, let's just put in a comma. Obviously you can choose whichever string you want to. So that has, hopefully, just put those fields from the original address into a single field. Simple as that. And now what I'm going to do is make sure that output from the concatenate processor gets into the rest of the process. So let's just sort of hook it up here. So it's in between the first and second processors there. And hopefully now, if I go back to the writer on the right hand side of this first process in the job, if I can find it, there we go. With a bit of luck, I'll see the original address as, there it is, an added field. Let's select it for writing. There we go, and there it is at the bottom. And let's output that to our data interface. Done. We'll just save that. Okay, good. So that's taken care of the first process. We've concatenated the original address together. But we have another process as well. And the output from the job comes from the second process. Now, we've adapted the writer of the first process. What we're going to have to do now is make sure the reader from the second process picks up that extra data we've added, and make sure the writer from the second process actually outputs it as well. So let's open this second process from the job. Let's have a look at the reader, and let's look at what it's reading in. And you can see, if I look at the selected inputs for processing, or for the process, they do not include the 3 added inputs. So I need to select them. And now they do. Okay, now they're part of our new process, our second process as well. So fine. And all we really want to do is make sure they're output. So we'll just go to the writer on the end of this process, which is here. Okay. And in that writer, we will select those 3 added fields: original address, premise number, and thoroughfare for writing. There they are at the bottom here. And in our data interface, we've got the 3 fields waiting for them that we added earlier. So let's hook them up. And let's hit OK. OK. Let's save that and close the process. So let's just review what we've done then. So we started by looking at the job. We noted that there were 2 processes in this job, and that each of the 2 processes read from and wrote to a data interface. It's the same data interface called address clean. And we further noted in the mapping of the output from the job, from the second process in the job, therefore effectively from the job, that we were writing to a web service called address clean. Okay, so we've adapted that web service. We've added the 3 extra attributes we needed. We've adapted the data interface. We've added the 3 extra attributes we needed there as well. We've made sure that we've mapped from the data interface, the attribute template, if you like, to the web service. And then we've gone into both of our processes in our job, and we've made sure that those 3 fields are being populated by the processes and passed from the writer of the first process to the reader of the second process, and from the writer of the second process to the web service. So theoretically, that should be all we need to do. Let's test it now. Let's close the address clean web service as a job, Let's go to the server console and let's run that job. So there it is, real-time address clean. We'll just run it with a run label of test. Go to current tasks, and we should see it's pretty quick to fire up. There we go. And now for the acid test. So let's get the web service again. Get service in the web service tester here. And if we just look at our outputs, I'm hoping we'll see at the bottom of those outputs, there they are, the three new fields: original address before cleaning, premise number and thoroughfare. Now let's try our test again. So I'm going to put in the same data in the inputs on the left as before, 92 Stafford Road, and then we had in the city, remember we had Sleaford, didn't we, with the L, which was a typo, deliberate typo. Should be Seaford without the L. And the other data that we had in there was, I think, the postal code, which was BN25 1UA. Doesn't matter whether you put the space in or not. And country UK. So we'll hit send, and that data will go off to our web service, and the results will come back on the right, and we're hoping that we see those three new fields being populated. So let's hit send now, and here are the results. So again, it's cleaned the city there for us. It's done all this good stuff. Put in the admin area there, and there's our cleaned address as before, with East Sussex in and Seaford as opposed to Sleaford. But if we go to the bottom now, we can see, first of all, there is the original address, 92 Stafford Road, Sleaford with an L, without the East Sussex, BN25 1UA UK. We've just got commas in where there were empty attributes that we didn't use in the inputs. You know, you could do some cleaning in your process. As I said, this was a quick and dirty fix to take those out and format it a bit more nicely. But below that, we've got the premise number now in its own field, and we've got the thoroughfare in its own field as well. Okay, so that's just an example of how you can adapt a data interface within a CDS service.